Gentleman yields back, and the gentleman from North Dakota, who's sitting in now as ranking member, is recognized for his questions.
Madam Chair, and I appreciate that debate. I think that debate gets broader than the actual workforce challenge that we sometimes face. North Dakota is #1 in the entire nation in producing barley, beans, pinto beans, canola, flax, honey, wheat, durum. We're #2 in sunflowers, and we're #3 in sugar beets. And if there's one issue I get more calls on my office on than anything else, it's this program. And it goes to what we were saying about a program of last resort. Just in the last several days, and I want to go back to what was said earlier about temporary work status and getting up in the morning. North Dakota doesn't have large-scale production agriculture. We actually have a ban on on corporate farming in our state. And so when we're talking about getting up at 4 a.m. and calving or going out, it's usually when we're bringing workforce in, whether they're coming from Georgia, Honduras, Mexico, or South Africa, the owner of the farm's with them at 4 a.m. and they're continuing and doing that producing. But so I think we also have to get past this concept of seasonal work, because if anybody understands seasons, it's people in North Dakota. But the reality is agriculture is a 24/7, 365 job. Whether you're planting in the spring, harvesting in the fall, fixing a shed in the winter, or running a cattle operation, whether it's dairy or a feedlot. And the restrictions that we see coming in on seasonal workers, I have a very good friend who runs a cattle operation in Leeds, North Dakota. She has had the same job advertised nationally for 7 years and cannot get it filled. So when we talk about opportunities from the American workforce, and she continues to apply for H-2A visas and then gets told she's running out of her season, or she has to skip a season. Well, if you're in a feedlot and your season ends March 30th, your second season begins April 1st. I mean, that's the reality of how this works. I had another friend who has a house for his temporary workforce in a community hooked up to water, but in the winter he winterizes it because he only uses it for seasonal work. USDA wouldn't grant him permission to have his visa because they couldn't see running water coming out of the tap. So there are real structural inhibitions that we do to this. But we also have 30,000 open jobs in our community and in our economy, and we've been blessed with an oil boom in Western North Dakota. And throughout the last 12 years, we have managed to weather these processes better than anybody else. But what we want is a workforce. We want people to come in, and I would prefer I think we need to get creative with these things. We should be allowed to do temporary workforce, allow these programs to go, allow people to keep the workers they want. If they keep them for 10 years, I mean, you age out of this type of labor just based on the fact that it's incredibly difficult labor. And allow family farmers to sponsor people. I mean, we should be having all of these conversations, and we should continue to work for it. So I guess I'll start with Mr. Nassif. I mean, if you could pick 2 things to streamline the H-2A process, like the burdens that really truly hit it, what would they be?
Well, we've talked about the complexity of getting workers to the fields on time when the harvest is needed and not having sufficient laborers when the harvest is really there. So an expedited process, it makes it less complicated, less expensive, less legalistic, would of course would be a big fix. But I think we have to really look at this issue of a cap very closely, because what's the reason for a cap? Is you want to make sure that you don't take American jobs, that you limit it to just what you need and not hire more people. So we know that people who are legally don't want the jobs, so we're not displacing anybody. So what's the purpose of the cap? Nobody hires more workers than they need, because that's not a smart economic model in any business. So those 2 items, I think, were both very important.
Is H-2A capped?
No.
Okay. And then I guess my question, and for me, it's I mean, obviously regional and territorial to some degree. How do we work for these situations where the workforce is I mean, very different in California than it is in North Dakota. Regardless, I mean, we need ag workers in North Dakota, have needed them for 30 years. We'll take them from anyone who's willing to work and be a part of our communities. We'd love to have them. But has there been any discussion about how we do this in a regional manner?
Well, obviously, if it's uncapped, then all regions are equal. If you have a capped program, then you have to allocate between regions. How do you do that? California has about 400,000 to 500,000. Are you going to give them all to California? Or are you going to try and spread them out to other areas that are desperately in need also?
Well, and I think anybody who likes honey would like some of them to come to North Dakota as well. With that, I yield.
Gentleman yields back.